story like the back of my hand. 'Cause I've heard.
Well, death and taxes are the only certainty. Well, 20% of people of society. And I have made it on my own in this world. Well, not to take care of time around a 2-year-old. I'm gonna start my own nation and do my own thing, and I will be king. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. Well, let me talk a bit about the weather. You must admit it's not very clever. Don't get me wrong, it's not an anti-British song. Well, there is nowhere I would rather be wrong. I'm gonna start my own nation and do my own thing, and I will be king. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. There are just a few things that I would like to say about the UK and how I think it has gone astray. Don't get me wrong, it ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buggering up, but you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation with the self-preservation.
Keep the red flag flying here.
And I'm going to go. I never know when I'm allowed to go. There's something happens and I'm supposed to wait for it, but I never hear it, whatever it is. And I don't even know what it is. But anyway, I'm going now. And that means that we are on the 83rd episode of Political Unmuted. And if you are one of the ones who joined us at the very beginning, God bless you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And what we're ready to do is we're ready to go, and provide you with a left-wing take on some of the political stories of the week. You hear so much right-wing comments and so many different comments, but this is a specifically left-wing take. And in the interest of balance, it's necessary to take it into account. So it's great to see you. And my golly, how good it is to see the team. Let's say hello to them. Hello, Paul.
Hello.
Paul is so important that when he couldn't be here last week, the whole thing just had to stop. That's how important it is. And the sort of leading to criticisms of our under a bus policy. Sort of what would happen if one of us went under the bus. And sort of the truth is, any of us could go under a bus, apart from Paul. I said, there you go. Hiya, Jane.
Hello.
It's great to see you. Is this just my lack of noticing, or is that a new picture of a dog over your shoulder there?
Oh, well, that is a picture of my beautiful collie who is no longer with us.
Just how lovely. Fantastic.
Thank you.
God bless you. Welcome anyway. Sam, hiya.
Hello.
Now, I saw you struggling with a rope dangling from the ceiling. It looked as though you were trying to pole dancing
really
without a
morbid.
pole.
I was doing aerial yoga, or aerial hammock hanging, yes, in very creative and athletic ways.
I thought so. Occasionally a struggle, I thought, but there we go. But one thing I noticed, Sam, was that you were doing these things, including hanging on this piece of string with no arms and no legs, I might point out, without a safety net. Don't you think that you ought to pull something soft to fall onto if you were to tumble out?
Well, that's the thing, is that I'm actually very secure in all of those positions, but I also know how to fall out. You're more likely to damage your toes and your ankles, really, with that dismount, if you don't know what you're doing. So, but I had a yoga mat underneath me. If I was doing anything that was even more dangerous, there are crash mats available.
Right, good. I'm glad to hear it, because we can't do without you. And finally, Stuart, God bless you. Welcome to the show. I'm going to bring you to, I know you've got news for us, but I'll do that as moment of the week, which we come to now.
Oh, the moment of the week. For some reason,
Thank you so much. Are we going to do without it then, Paul?
For now, we'll get it working for the next lot.
Week. You got to do it properly if you're going to do it, for goodness sake. All right, let's start with Stuart, because what's your moment of the week, Stuart?
I've got two. I'll be quick with them both. Silly season's basically over for me now. We've just had my town council's AGM, and I surprisingly kept the committee that I'm most fond of, the one that covers allotments, open spaces, green things, anything to do with the environment. And I somehow managed to get 66% of the independent group's vote alongside the Labour Party vote, which I think, perhaps shows an endorsement of some confidence. And the other one is apparently Apple said the iPod is dead. It's no longer supported, discontinued. Rest in peace, iPod.
Well, I never had one anyway. I did have one of those little things, tape recorders, carried that around, but never had an iPod. It's great that you're on the environment thing. In a way, that's the way you can change people's life for the best. But you're not the chair of the council. How close did you come on that one?
One vote. There was one vote in it. But that says more about the size of the council than anything else.
The sort of hard lines, God bless. They don't know what they're missing. Samantha, apart from trying to hang yourself on a piece of string, your moment of the week.
Well, I'm being a troublemaker again, John. I don't mean to be a troublemaker, but apparently I am a troublemaker. I have been told off for using videos of myself on my own social media, because apparently those videos belong to the council. And I'm allowed to record council meetings, but I have to do it myself. So let's just see next time I have a council meeting and I'm setting up my tripod, how that is received. I
I said the word I used was bullshit. Which council is this? Is this Shildon or Durham?
This is Durham.
Durham County Council. And are these recordings that they are putting out in the public domain?
Yeah. So they stream some of the meetings on YouTube. So I've took some clips off YouTube and then actually made them more accessible by putting subtitles on them and giving a bit of context to them, and published them on my own social media, which is apparently not allowed.
I've never heard anything as stupid in my life. But somebody was saying on the comments that there's nothing to stop me taking something off it and publishing it, is there?
Well, quite.
Yeah, and I mean, have you challenged this? I mean, has this gone as far as the monitoring officer?
So this is very new. We only got the email about it today, so we will be considering our options. I don't believe it falls underneath copyright myself, because I think there are loopholes in copyright for reporting news. And also there's no demonstrable way in which we damage the council by doing this. In fact, we're advertising for them, helping them reach more people. So I think they'd really struggle to force it as a copyright claim. I think my back's covered on that, but we'll talk about it. We'll work it through.
Yes, I would just ignore it myself and do it and put the ball in their court to take you to court for breach of copyright. Absolutely ridiculous. It's that they've forgotten that they're not a private company. They've forgotten that we elect them and they're a public body. Absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, let's go to war there, Sam. I had a right row with the monitoring officer, which I won. They had to change the rules. Jane, moment of your week.
A moment of my week was the fact that in the Queen's speech this week, the Renters Reform Bill was included. So they've committed to banning the Section 21 no fault evictions this year, putting together a landlord's register, and implementing a decent home standard for privately rented homes. So I'm so happy to see that, and they need to do it now. So we need to keep on at them to make sure they do.
Long overdue, absolutely long overdue that. We'll talk about the Queen's speech, I think, next week. I think I'll put it as our main discussion thing next week. But my immediate reaction to it personally was utterly inadequate to task. Was that your immediate reaction, Jane?
I think I was so much expecting that it kind of washed over me, and I was just happy to have a little tiny concession for renters.
What do you think of it being Charles and not the Queen?
I don't know. It's sad. I presume she's either feeling quite poorly, which is really sad, or that she's disgusted with this government and wanted nothing to do with the opening of Parliament. And I can understand that too. So she's kind of gone up in my estimation a little bit.
My guess is that it's they're saying it's mobility issues. It's not because she's poorly and she's taking virtual meetings. I think it's because she refuses to be wheeled in a wheelchair. She can't make the walk and she won't be seen in a wheelchair. That's my bet. But there you go. Anyway, does it take if it's Charles and not the Queen? This is the thing, we'll talk about that next week. God bless you. Thank you. And finally, Paul, what was your moment of the week? And if you say Steve Coogan, you're in a lot of trouble. Neil Terry has already been complaining about you preferring Steve Coogan to his jokes. And I'm so sorry, Neil. It's absolutely embarrassing. But there we go. Apart from Steve Coogan.
I did enjoy Steve Coogan. I did enjoy Alan Partridge. It was good. But, I think the moment of the week for me, honourable mention for Britain as the People, saying, were we discussing Durham Police and Beergate a minute ago? Because lots of people have been asking me if I was invited to that one. No, I was not invited to that party if there was one. And I'm not saying there was a party, but if there was one, I wasn't invited to it. So yeah, loads of people have asked me that because we're so close, but no, I don't think I ever would receive one, even to a real party. My moment of the week is just, it was my last chairman's of the parish council report, which seems to have gone down really, really well in the local community, and finally, like, we've got rid of that stigma of everyone complaining about the parish council. It's taken me like a year of communicating. I've been incredibly unpopular for with one or two of the other councillors for going on and trying to speak to the community and talking to them all the way through. And then we had our AGM, and it was like stepping back a long, long way. It was there were people being abusive and trying to change decisions after they'd been agreed and things like that, and it just immediately took a step back. So hopefully that will not be a sign of things to come, but it did feel like a big step back. But anyway, it was quite nice to speak to the community and for them to have appreciated what we've done over the past year. Local politics should matter the most out of everything, but there's so little power given to those people, and I would just love to see people given the opportunity to spend money in their own local communities, so that more people would be interested in local politics if there was more power in it, and if people got to make those decisions and vote on things that they would like to see in the area. That would really, really change lives, rather than us scrapping around and having like charities bidding for money for building firms and who are pretending that they're acting in this charitable way, but they're actually putting a lot of strain on our local resources and things like that. It's an utter mess, but it's by design, isn't it? So I would like to see more power go to grassroots level and more people involved in that. But that's a long way off.
All down to people like you and the brilliant way that you do the job. Sort of. Jane, are you a local councillor?
No, I'm definitely not a local councillor. No, I'm not brave enough to stand to be a political figure.
Oh, well, you ought to. Listeners, Stuart, Sam, and Paul are all on their parish councils. That's the grassroots, the very basis of our democracy, and long may it be so. Righty-ho, thank you everybody for your moments of the week, but we need to get on because we have something really important to discuss.
Now it's time for the big story.
It is. It's time for the big story, and the big story is the local elections. And when I was writing to the team, I said, is this seismic shift or is it damp squib? Paul, seismic shift or damp squib? Oh, by the way, before I start, Paul, sorry to interrupt you. Oh, sorry, please forgive me. There are 4 countries in the United Kingdom: England, Northern Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. And I'm going to start this, listeners, by, I hope you don't mind, talking just about England. And I'll ask my 4 guests about England. And then what we'll do, we may have a chat about the other ones as a kind of a second round later on. I hope you don't mind me doing that. Paul, let's just talk about England. Seismic shift or damp squib?
There was it's a bit, it depends which party you're talking about. So if you're talking about the Conservative Party, definitely seismic shift. That is a damp squib for them. It's not a very nice situation for them. They've lost a fair amount of votes, although it is worrying how many people will still vote Tory after everything that they've done. Like, if decency was a thing, maybe this is to do with, because local council elections are really interesting in that people think that they reflect the national picture. Absolutely. And we don't reflect the national. There's a lot of good local candidates that people like or popular. Sometimes not even good. Sometimes they've just got a big family and they're well known and all sorts of things. These things happen. So local politics is very strange and gets warped by the national picture, but it isn't necessarily. It's influenced by the national picture, but it isn't necessarily the national picture. So the Conservatives have done very badly, but way better than I think they should have done. Way better. I think they were polling about 30%. 30% after what happened through COVID and what happened through Partygate and what happened with giving all the contracts away to everyone and the cost of living crisis, which is the cost of Tories crisis. They're doing incredibly well. This is like the worst ever student who didn't turn up to any lessons and hadn't learned to do like anything at all throughout their entire school career, just turning up and getting a C. You know what I mean? Like when they do the GCSE exam, it's that kind of thing. They shouldn't have done as well as they did, but they did badly, but okay in comparison. Labour are trying to say that they've done incredibly well in England. They're actually using the Welsh results to try and boost that, and we'll come to Wales later on, I'm sure. But actually, Labour's vote share in England's fallen back from 2018. So you've got this weird situation where you've got some Labour politicians being wheeled out to say, we've done so well because, like, you know, even though we haven't made much progress, it was such a high bar to get over. 2018, we did so incredibly well. It was, like, so high that to do slightly better than that in terms of seats is an incredible feat. And then you've got other people saying, well, actually, we're still suffering from long Corbyn. And it's this ridiculous, like, thing that, again, it's Schrodinger's Corbyn again. It can't both be true at the same time. It can't be true that Jeremy Corbyn did terrible in 2018 and did incredibly well, which is why they've done so badly now. Excuse me. Someone take over for a second. I'm going to cough.
Yeah, I will. Thank you, Jane. What was your take on the English results? I mean, one of the things while Paul was talking was talking about people forgiving the Tories amazingly. It seems that they were more forgiving in some of those red wall seats than they were down in the southeast. It was in the southeast where they were being caned, and up in the north where you would sort of where they've had this long history of Labour. Sort of, it seemed that people were thinking that they hadn't really given the Tories enough of a chance after 12 years. I mean, what was your take on the England results? Was it good for Labour or bad?
I didn't think it was good for Labour. I think the thing that always really saddens me is the low turnout. So I would really personally like to see the election results like shown for every constituency, you know, really properly showing 70% didn't vote, actually 10% voted for the person who won. I think maybe if it was represented like that, it might, I don't know, maybe that might prompt more people to realise how important their vote is. So I think from what I can see, it looks like there's a lot of upsets amongst people are upset and disappointed, so they've just not gone out to vote, which is understandable to a certain extent. But I think it's quite politics. It seems quite inaccessible for people in this country. I think, in my experience, when I've had ballots through my door before I got involved with my local Labour Party, I wouldn't have had a clue about any of the councillors, who they were. The only thing that would have meant anything to me was the name of the party, whether I recognised that or not, and whatever I might have read about that in the mainstream media. And that's not helpful. I wouldn't have really known where to go for information apart from the leaflet they put through my door, which is a very limited thing. And I think there is a lot of disillusionment amongst people where they don't believe what politicians say now. So I think that's something as a country we need to address, make it easier to find out what people are really standing for, and realise that there probably is someone who represents you reasonably well on that ballot and you need to vote for them.
I mean, this is a major issue, isn't it? We've been talking about it a lot because the people's main information comes from a media which is anything but sort of objective, isn't it? I mean, they're motivated to get people to vote a certain way. Mia says, do you think that the low turnout was the results of no, do you think that sort of I've lost it now. Is that a lot of people are voting Tory, or fewer people are voting Labour, which allows the Tories over the line? Are the Tories continuing to get elected because they're continuing to hold support, or is it because Labour are failing to mobilise the opposition vote? What do you reckon, Jane?
I do think that Labour are failing to mobilise the opposition vote. When I was looking through the tweets on Britain Elects, and they had nice little tweets for, you know, individual constituencies showing what had happened, and the pattern that I seem to be seeing was that in a lot of constituencies, Labour's vote share had gone down slightly, but not enough to change the result. So you don't see it on these big national maps, but I thought it had gone down a bit.
Yeah. So it's strange. Sam, I've got another thing here which I'm going to bring you in on. I don't think people forgave the Tories. I think they are still being manipulated by the right-wing press. How true is this, do you think?
We've got a very interesting problem in our democracy, which is that everybody is working like 3 jobs on 0 hours contracts and dealing with the kids and like trying to get the Tesco order in, and that politics sort of whizzes by their face on social media, and a lot of they don't have the time to double check and triple check and evaluate sources and read manifestos, right? So I think not just like the traditional media, but social media is all very open to manipulation. And I think obviously we didn't see anything on the scale of what we have seen in the general elections, but we've basically seen in general elections people can buy votes, right? Because they can set up random pages that are tangentially related to politics, and spend whatever they want, really, on those, because they're not technically linked to political parties and they fall between the cracks. So I think that's something that we do need to think about, but I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how we actually get people to talk to politicians, and listen to what they've got to say. It's a real problem.
I mean, Jacqueline Hemmings says here she hasn't had a political party leaflet through her door for ages. I know for a fact that the independents in Newton Aycliffe had just stopped bothering. They just did not bother. They just put the name on a ballot paper with independent after it. The Tories put out 1 or 2. The Liberals cut against that trend. They put out something every 3 months. And I wonder how responsible that is for their success. But here in Whitby, I only got 1 leaflet, and that was a Labour Party one shoved through me door. I mean, do you sense a lack of urgency, a lack of care about local politics in general, Sam?
Well, in order to get leaflets through doors, you either need a lot of money so that you can pay for people to deliver them, or you need a lot of volunteers to actually go out and deliver them. Certainly in my local party, I'm seeing a lot fewer volunteers than there has been in the past. People can make their own decisions about why that might be, but that is a real impediment, and we definitely don't have the money to pay for a private company to go around and deliver them. So that's a problem. But also, all political parties do this thing where they focus on where they think their votes are, and that pool just gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and it's not a great way to grow your vote, and that has to happen outside of elections. So I would hope that people who didn't hear from political groups during the election will hear from them before the next election.
It's all to do with foot soldiers. The fewer foot soldiers you have, the less contact you have, the more isolated and ineffective you become. It's a big problem. It's a big problem for Labour, I think. I mean, Sam, the Greens and the Lib Dems did well. Have you got any thoughts about why?
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, I'm quite happy that the Lib Dems did well in the South, because actually, if we're going to get the Tories out of power, we do need the Lib Dems to take some seats off them in the South, where Labour Party's never going to take seats off them. Obviously, in my history, I was the generation of students that was totally shat on by the Lib Dems when they got into power in 2010. They told me they were going to they were going to abolish student fees, and they raised them. And I am now in a coalition where the Lib Dems and the Greens have once sided with the Tories at Durham County Council. So I am reluctant to advocate for a progressive alliance, because in my life, these progressive parties, the Greens and the Lib Dems, don't ally themselves with me and my needs. So that's a problem.
I'm hoping that the people voted Green because they're becoming more aware of green issues, and I find the Green Party quite radical in many other of its policies as well, quite left wing in many of its policies. But the Lib Dems, I just find them liars, and I have no issue. Paul.
I think that when we get more Green politicians, we only have one Green MP, right? And she's great. But I think as we get more Green politicians, we'll find they are also very changeable, like the Lib Dems are, depending on who they're representing. I just think that politics is a place for principles, and I'm not sure those radical. I wouldn't describe the Greens as socialist movement, for example. And I know of people who've gone to the Greens because they think the Greens are to the left of Labour, and I'm not sure that's true either. So, I'm a bit meh on that. Anyway, you weren't talking to me, you were going to talk to Paul.
Yeah, Paul, did you wave that? You wanted to say something, Paul?
Yeah, it's just the Greens probably did the best out of everyone. Well, arguably, but the Lib Dems have quietly done incredibly well. They've got far greater gains than Labour, and both of those parties campaigned on a cost of living crisis. That's the interesting thing, and this also, I know we're going to mention it in a little bit, but as did Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland, as did Welsh Labour. So everyone who's been really successful campaigned on this idea that real people's lives have been adversely affected by the policies of the national government. If you position yourself and say, actually, what we are is this really nice, we're competent just like the government, we're just as competent as them, but we've got more integrity, that isn't going to cut through to people because they don't think any politicians have integrity. And the other thing is they don't really like the Conservative policies. They don't really like the fact that they've plunged us into this massive crisis. So kind of trying to emulate them a little bit and then say also at the same time, we're just a little bit like them, but we've got a straighter tie. Look at him, he's a mess. Like that Prime Minister guy doesn't have a very nice haircut, but I do. It's not going to cut through, is it? No. People care about policies. They don't care about presentation.
I've got this is a beef of mine, and I know I'm not supposed to talk. I'm just the chair, but we sort of doing the same slightly more competently is not what we need. The whole thing is clearly disintegrating in front of our eyes, and we need some radical policies which will catch that up. We need some socialist policies which will completely change the complexion of our politics, our economics, and our society. But that's by the by. I've got a question for you, Paul, and then Stuart, I'm not ignoring you. I am going to come to you. Please forgive me. But Paul, one thing that I did notice was that the Jewish Chronicle and the Jewish News both reported the Labour success in Barnet as a success of Labour's anti-Semitism drive. That the Jewish people who lived in Barnet were able to come back to Labour because Keir Starmer is doing such a good job of rooting out anti-Semitism. what's your reaction to that? Is it just the talk of the Jewish movement for Labour, or do you think there's actual validity in what they're saying, that we're beginning to re-establish credibility with Jewish voters?
I don't know. I haven't spoken to any Jewish people about this in particular, so I think I would need to be incredibly careful about putting ideas, certainly about a generalization as wide as, like, Jewish people are as diverse of opinion as any other group of people, being that they are people. And so this kind of, the idea of a Jewish bloc vote is a bit worrying. It doesn't seem to me like the country understand what anti-Semitism is. Jewish people are people, and therefore will vote in all sorts of different ways. So maybe some of them were turned off by what was said in the media about Jeremy Corbyn and what was said about the Labour Party, and that could very well be the case in certain areas. There are also other Jewish people who were ardent supporters of Jeremy Corbyn at that time, and you will have everything in between in that. So yeah, I would urge massive caution about making any general... I know you weren't doing this yourself, you were reporting what was said, but I would urge people to have massive caution about making any sort of blanket decision about some sort of, like, there's a trope about that's called the hive mind trope. That is that all Jewish people think exactly the same, and they clearly don't, because they are simply people.
I mean, I don't want to continue this, because you're absolutely right. It's something that is incredibly sensitive, but I thought it was significant that these views were being put forward by the Jewish Chronicle. This is the Jewish Chronicle suggesting that this is the case. And
I do know people who are Jewish who don't, who wouldn't respect the Jewish Chronicle as their main source of news, and I'm sure many Jewish people do think it's a great source of news. So that, again, that fits in. What I just said.
And yes, I would have thought so. That I suspect the Jewish Chronicle rather suspects that there is a Jewish bloc. I put the word Jewish in inverted commas. Jewish bloc vote, which can be won or lost. Stuart, what was your take on the English element of the elections?
I think that one thing that I think people have touched on here is the fact that you need an active membership if you're going to build, not just retain numbers. And certainly that was reflected in where we saw larger, more active CLPs in urban areas make gains, whereas we have disenfranchised members in more northern, more rural-ish areas where we sustained losses as such. You need a really active membership to get your leaflets out, to convince people on the door, to just make it seem like we are the alternative to what's being delivered right now. If there's no one out there singing the praises of the party, no one else is going to do it for us, are they?
No. So I got to comment. I'm going to just ignore you for 2 seconds, Stuart. An awful lot of interesting statements by listeners about different policies. Staunch Lib Dem supporters, nearly a Green vote. Comments about policies, really very interesting comments going on there. Thank you so much for those. What you have to say, people, is just so valuable. Stuart, one last question. So what's your message for Labour in England? What's your message for Labour in England?
Internally, start investing more in your membership. Start giving them everything that they need to go out and deliver on the party message. If the Labour Party believes that they have a policy that is right for the nation, they need people to go and deliver it. You've got to give everything to those members to do that.
Thank you so much. Now, as I said, we're going to talk now briefly, listeners, about the results in different parts of the country. I'm going to turn to Paul first because he's the fount of knowledge in Northern Ireland on the team, and there it was massively significant. That really was a seismic shift, but I think you're going to tell us with potentially zero effect.
I don't know whether I think so. Obviously, what happened was Sinn Féin, which is a Republican party, wants to join the rest of Ireland and have a united Ireland. Got the largest share of the vote, and they have the most number of ministers, and they can nominate First Minister. There's a proportional representation system where the second party can nominate the deputy First Minister. So, you know, it's very significant that an Irish Republican Party, given that Northern Ireland is literally designed to have a unionist majority. Unionist means they want to stay part of the UK. The whole thing was set up after the Republic of Ireland was set up in order to keep a unionist majority in that area of the country, and that's gone. Has it gone? If you add up the percentage of votes for unionist parties, it's still greater than that that Sinn Féin got, but it is very significant that is the most popular party now. But they did not talk about that very much. They talked about the cost of living crisis, and obviously they have a Republican identity. People know who they are. But when they went to speak to people on the doors, they were talking about how they could help in their lives. They've had a long-standing strategy of not just being there at election time. One of the things I read a paper before about one of Sinn Féin's strategies, which was after the election, when they were elected, they door-knocked in the weeks and months following the election, rather than just doing it before. They went and said, look, we're setting up an office over there, that's our address, there's a card, if you need anything, that's where I'll be. They've been working on proper politics for a long time, and I know people think of the links with the IRA and things like that. That's what the UK press are absolutely obsessed with on the mainland. They're obsessed with that link, but I don't think it's as significant as people believe. They're a legitimate workers' party. That's what they were always set up as being. So, I think there are some really, really interesting developments there. But the most interesting development was that they didn't actually talk about a referendum or anything like that. And they have gained popularity in another way. But if you look at Scotland, who have a large nationalist majority in Parliament, for example, so most of the Scottish MPs are Scottish National Party, who want to break away from the UK. You've got Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland, who want to break away from the UK, and you've got Welsh Labour, who aren't averse to the idea of a Welsh national identity. There's a big push away from English identity here, because I think England is far too dominant in the UK with regards to how it deals with everyone else. It's all about England, isn't it? And then I think people in England think it's all about London. And I think that's a big problem with the fact that the Labour Party made gains in London, not elsewhere in the country, probably feeding more into that feeling that other nations are going to have that problem as well.
I would agree with you. That sort of the Labour Party seems to have become a London party, and then it's still failing to have real impact in other places in the UK. I want to ask you about the DUP, because the reason I said that it was a seismic shift that we've elected Sinn Féin, but it would. Then I said it's going to have zero effect, because the DUP, the Sinn Féin cannot take their role as the leading party until the DUP nominate a deputy leader, and they're refusing to do so.
But
Now,
this
sort
has
of-
been a problem for years. Like, you know, the power sharing has been on the rocks for a long time, and this was a lot to do with the Brexit debate, or actually before that, cash for ash. There's been long running problems with the DUP. Basically, the DUP have been taking a position of stopping Stormont, which is the Irish National Parliament, like the Northern Irish Parliament, from working in a successful way, which it had done for a number of years with the most staunch of Unionists and the most staunch of Republicans. But now the DUP seem to be, I don't know, they seem to be disappearing further within themselves. They seem to be further
Just
retracting
one
into this
question
position.
briefly before I move on from you, Paul. I mean, do you think that this will further damage the DUP's vote as people get out of patience with the fact that they're just wrecking things? Or do you think that it will draw in staunch unionists and strengthen their vote? Do you think that this is the right policy if the DUP was bothered about winning the elections?
The DUP, I don't think the DUP think like that. The DUP are an incredibly principled party. It's just their principles are a bit old-fashioned, let's say, or you know, there are some very, very, very strange opinions within the DUP. The fact that people still vote for them is incredibly interesting to me. The fact that a lot of them deny that dinosaurs existed. You know, we had the whole thing at the beginning when we were going to have food shortages, and Sammy Wilson said, well, just go to the chippy if there are food shortages after Brexit. Like, not realising that the chippy also get their food. Like, the chippy just magics their food up or something like that. You know, unbelievable. There is some unbelievable ignorance within the DUP, but you know that's been Irish politics, the Northern Irish politics for a while.
Jake Ratcliffe echoing my suspicion that if they continue to destroy politics in Northern Ireland, what helped Sinn Féin was this thing that we need to talk about people's well-being, and as they scupper the Stormont, they'll find they're losing support. But we'll wait and see. I can be wrong on that. Jane, before we were discussing at the beginning, you said you could say something about all of them. Talk to me about the nations other than England, and tell me what you think about the results there.
So I know a bit more about Northern Ireland now, but before this, all I know about Northern Ireland was that I'd seen that Sinn Féin put through a bill to ban 0-hour contracts in January. I would have been very tempted to vote for a party who put through a bill like that, but that's about all I know about it. On Wales, wasn't that amazing? Wasn't it lovely to see Welsh Labour get all those extra seats? They've got brilliant socialist policies. I think it's the first time 16 and 17-year-olds have been allowed to vote.
Yes.
Which is fantastic. And I'm just really happy about what happens in Wales. And I know someone who used to be a really absolutely fantastic Labour campaigner where I used to live in Oxfordshire, Cathy Augustine, and I know that she was successful in getting a seat as a councillor in Wales. She's recently moved there and she will be absolutely fantastic, and I'm very jealous of people living in Wales for having such a good government and such brilliant councillors.
I've been asked by one of the listeners to mention Emir Rees, who is a socialist think tank member and has been elected as a councillor, so congratulations.
They're very lucky in Wales.
Stuart, have you any comments about any of about Scotland or Wales?
Just that for the first time, maybe in as far back as I can remember, that we're talking about Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland, about things that affect people. So we're discussing. You said they're reporting back on poverty, on trade. Where, like, certainly with Northern Ireland, we'd had you'd only see reports back on how people would vote with regards to their stance on a united Ireland, or whether they wanted to stay part of a union, and they never got into the, the real situation stuff of, poverty, staying warm, making sure your kids have a school, that stuff. And now that's the important stuff, and that's what we're seeing in Scotland and Wales, and that's being communicated now, I think, quite strongly in England, that these are the things that are important to the people of Scotland, to Wales. It's not us telling them, they're telling us what's important now.
I think the argument is we need to start listening to them, because I wish our government thought they were important as well. Sam, we've completely, massively overrun on this. Sum up the whole thing for us and we'll move on.
I just want to remind people of the best part of this election, which is when the Tories tried to rebrand themselves as local Tories and put leaflets through people's doors trying to say, don't listen to them. I'm not like them. I'm a local Tory. I'm better, right? The only difference between Boris Johnson and a local Tory is the local Tory is closer to you. Please don't vote for them. And it didn't work. Thankfully, it doesn't. And this is something that we need to learn. By the way, the public don't like to hear you badmouth yourself. And I think we really, I say we, not all of us, not everyone, but the Labour Party need to be very careful about spending a lot of time talking about how terrible we were before, because that does not go down well with the public. Actually, all they hear is they're all terrible. I'll not vote for any of them.
Thank you, Sam. Jake Ratcliffe disagrees with you. He says the best part of this election was the nudist party in Newport. And now Paul will move to the other stories. Roe versus Wade. We have a leaked draft which is going to overturn it, put decisions on laws on abortion back in the hands of the state legislatures, and everybody is absolutely worried that we're going to see not only laws against abortion, but other laws as well. There's a law being prepared, a bill put forward in Louisiana, which will say that personhood begins at fertilization, and will declare that abortion is a crime of murder. That's Louisiana. Now, it's not the law in Louisiana because it can't be, but that's the bill that's on the book. 26 states ready to make laws such as that if Roe versus Wade is overturned. Talk to me, Jane, about this.
I think Sam was going to talk to you about it, John.
Right, talk to me, Sam, about this.
I was ready because I know Jane's always like super prepared on everything. I'm slightly less prepared on menopause, if you wanted to talk to me about that. But yeah, I mean, I can't overstate how horrendous it is. Like you say, that half of the United States of America poised to remove people's right to choose when they become parents. And I'm getting more aggressive about this in my old age, John. I would like to give every single person at a pro-life rally a shiny new adopted baby. That's what I'd like to do. I'd like to make them actually live with the consequences of that decision, because it's all right saying to somebody else, you need to have this baby. You've made your decision, but where is everybody else's determination to make sure these children have a safe and happy life, right? You can't, it's not pro-life, it's pro-birth, and there is absolutely no medical or ethical, it's horrible. And the problem is, this is the legislative arrangement in America that these justices sit for life. So, you can't remove them and get a more equal balance of people who have a variety of different views. Look, when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, we all said this would happen. and a lot of people said we were being hysterical, and here it is, you know. So and it won't be the first thing, by the way. When they get this through, they will come for LGBT people, they will come for all of these progressive, freedoms that we have enjoyed. And it is really scary stuff. It really feels like the world's going back on itself. And I had people coming on my Facebook and saying, look, I believe that life begins at conception, and I believe that abortion is murder. You can have those beliefs, but when you're forcing it on other people, like, you can have all the specific and very, very particular religious beliefs, which are based on reading your religious book out of context, but that doesn't give you the right to force it on someone else. I personally wouldn't have an abortion myself. I don't have the right to withdraw that right from somebody else. And don't forget, you can never ban abortions. You can only ban safe abortions and abortions for poor people, because people with money will always be able to go somewhere where it is legal and safe to have an abortion. What we're talking about is banning safe abortions for poor people.
And particularly worrying, Sam, because one of the things that the right is going to, the evangelical right is going to go after once they've got abortion, is contraception as well. Mm. And I mean, these things are horrific. President Biden is opposing it on the grounds that it interferes with personal liberty. Do you think that it's, I mean, would you agree with him?
I think, President Biden's been a disappointment on many levels. Kamala Harris came out and had quite a strong statement on this, along the lines of, don't you dare try and do this, we won't let you. I just think when you're talking about personal liberty, it's like, again, it's a politician's answer. Okay, he's a politician, that's going to happen. But sometimes we need people to be bold with the truth. And the truth is that abortion is healthcare.
Thank you. Jane, the Democrats are describing, female Democrats are describing this as the fight of a generation. Do you think it's that important?
Yeah, I absolutely do think it's important. And the draft didn't only refer to this, the draft did also refer to the rights of to same-sex marriage and even to consensual sexual acts between adults, didn't it, I believe, on the basis that they're not deeply rooted in history, which is just the most awful logic I've ever heard in my life. It's terrifying to say that, because it didn't happen in the 19th century, it shouldn't happen now.
So, I mean, is this the fight of women in Britain, or is it just an issue for America?
Well, a year or two ago, that I wouldn't have thought we'd be sitting here today with the policing bill, and I wouldn't have thought that we'd be talking about shipping asylum seekers to a country like Rwanda or any country, to be honest, but especially not a country with such, human rights abuses in its recent history. I wouldn't have believed that would have happened. I've just been shocked by the absolute torrent of terrifying legislation from this government, which has attacked our civil liberties in the last year. So actually, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know if I expect it, but it really would not surprise me for them to do something that terrible.
Thank you. Paul, is this the fault of the Supreme Court and the way the politicization of the Supreme Court? Is it the fault of Trump, or is it just the mobilization of the evangelical right? What's brought about this change in America?
I think it's I think there's an undercurrent that's always been there through history, but there's a very, very stupid argument that's very easy to make. So if you advocate for an unborn child, as they would say, who can't advocate for an unborn child? It sounds beautiful, but you know what? Unborn children can't demand that that they should have rights in life. They can't ask for, the right to food. They can't ask for the right to fair treatment. They can't ask for anything. They're fictitious for these people. So they don't care about these people whatsoever. When these unborn children, as they will call them, become people, suddenly they don't matter. Because they're not advocating for the people who are alive to be treated well. They're not advocating for them to have rights. They're advocating for some sort of fantasy to have rights, like as if this, as I say, it's a very naive and very, I don't know, a kind of blinkered view of the world. Of course you can advocate for them, because they don't talk back. They don't tell you what they need. They don't like have real needs at this time in their life. It's just that awful person who's going to do this awful thing to someone who hasn't been born yet, who haven't had a chance. Terrible things are happening all the time, and they are not saying a thing about that. The same people who aren't saying a thing, who won't lift a finger to change the world as it is now, suddenly want to bring someone else into that world who at this time, you can make all sorts of different arguments about like when that person becomes a person. But I think that is the most instructive thing. They don't seem to care about the people who have already been born. They just seem to care about the unborn.
Indeed, it's more than that they actively criticise and attack the single mother, the huge family, the sort of there's active hostility towards them once the child is born. Stuart, is this a man's fight? Is this a fight for men, or is it just a woman's fight?
It's a fight for everyone, because controlling women's bodies, controlling workers' bodies is a mechanism that allows people to keep the status quo, to deepen the economic injustices going on. If people are forced to carry children that they can't support, that takes them out of the economy. Women can't go to work if they're having to give childcare, which is a huge factor on the life chances for those children, for that woman. Having a growing population as well makes the job market more of a rough ride, and that keeps wages down low. Certainly they've barely moved in America for the last decade. This would see them not moving any further for the next 10, 20 years. It's all about keeping everybody down low, whether you're a man or a woman. This will affect you.
Yes, and men's lives will be ruined by this decision if it happens like they say it's going to happen, as well as women's lives. Sam, I'm going to steal just 5 minutes of your time, because I do think it's important that we talk about the third issue, which is the lack of support for menopausal women in our society. Paul and Stuart, with respect, I'm not going to ask your opinions on this unless you're desperate to speak. I'm just going to ask the two ladies what they think. Jane, kick off for us. I mean, tell us what it's all about, and then sort of tell us what we need to do.
So the Fawcett Society have issued a report based on a study commissioned by Channel 4, and it's really very shocking. I was really surprised by some of these statistics. 45% of women going through the menopause who responded to this survey said they have not spoken to their GP about it because of the stigma. So nearly half of women going through it, but there's so much stigma they can't speak to their GP, which is just incredible. 39% who've had time off work as a result of the symptoms said that they put anxiety and depression down on their certificate rather than the menopause, because of the stigma again around it. And obviously anxiety and depression can be big symptoms and are huge things and part of it. But the fact that they felt, I mean, the stigma around anxiety and depression, you know, if you're anyone who's been through that, you'll know that people going through those issues are not treated well in a lot of workplaces. So, you know, so that they feel there's even more, you know, mistreatment of someone who's going through the menopause is, I'm just really shocked. 22% of disabled women have who responded, and 9% of non-disabled have said they left their job due to symptoms. It got that bad. The respondents were saying they feel ignored by their healthcare providers and in their workplace. 80% said there was no basic support in their workplace, and 41% said that their symptoms were treated as a joke by their colleagues, which is just really sad. I'm shocked by all of those things.
I got some questions to ask you. I was horrified by the 41% who treated it as a joke, but I must say I've heard women going through the menopause who have joked about it. Sort of, I was much more shocked about the fact that a third of male workers said that it was unprofessional and inappropriate to bring this issue up as relevant for the workplace.
I wonder if they're the same people who might make a colleague going for a mental health episode feel that they want to go home and kill themselves. And I know that's a horrible thing to say, but I wonder if we really need to take a look at ourselves as a society and think about the way we treat each other and the way we deal with what we perceive as weaknesses in people, and the fact that we all suffer from, you know, we're all vulnerable to physical and mental health, you know, fluctuations according to the situation we're in, and that is not something to be belittled. It's not something to make someone feel bad about.
One of the issues I thought was that when we looked at the range of symptoms, I mean, the first thing is that if you'd have asked me before I started reading up about this, what the symptoms of the menopause were, beyond hot flushes, I would have struggled to tell you. And remember, I had a wife who went through the menopause. And I think that society is particularly ignorant about these issues, because I certainly was. But lack of sleep, brain fog, anxiety, depression, there's an awful lot of things which are coming out as problems in the workplace, which actually boil down to this one medical episode that women are going through. How do you reckon HRT is a treatment for it, Jane?
I don't know too much about it. I know that it's the main treatment in this country. I generally have a feeling that what I've seen of healthcare in this country for a lot of conditions is quite dated. And you know, with my limited experience of countries like Germany, I feel they take a much more balanced and holistic approach potentially to a lot of conditions. So I don't know how good our treatment regime is for it, but I did think what came across from this survey was that there was a suggestion that one of the radical ideas we could implement was making sure that GPs are properly trained to understand it, which suggests to me that there might be a little bit of an issue with the treatment that is on offer.
Basically, Leanne Barrett, she's had more support from Davina McCall than she has from her GP. And sort of spot on, Leanne. Samantha, I mean, what are the solutions here?
It's strange, isn't it, how female life is shrouded in these mysteries. You know, poor girls, you know, start to bleed before their parents have told them about what a period is. Then you know, you have your periods which are shrugged off as an occurrence that doesn't need much thinking about, but a lot of people have debilitating period pains. I actually am on medication to stop my periods entirely because of it, because I actually can't function for those 3 days a month. There were some brilliant painkillers, but they took them off the market, so that was the end of that. And a lot of women have health conditions like endometriosis and polycystic ovary syndrome, which are just totally sort of like, well, you've got it, you deal with it. And again, GPs don't seem to understand how debilitating these things are for people. And then when you give birth, maybe if you choose to have a child, nobody talks to you about that. Literally, they avoid talking to you about it because they don't want to scare you. So you just have to do it without knowing that what's actually going to happen. And then at the end of it, you go through the menopause, which also nobody has talked to you about because it's been a huge taboo through the whole of everybody in your family's life. So I think the answer is for everybody to talk about these things a little bit more, to be honest with each other. Don't not tell your younger sisters or cousins about what you're going through, because they're going to go through it too. And definitely the only thing that has helped me to understand the struggle that women with menopause go through has been women with the menopause talking to me about what is happening. Also, a big issue at the moment is the lack of HRT and the supply chain issues. Again, you just think whether such supply chain issues would ever arise with a really vital drug like Viagra, and you think, have we just been deprioritized again? Probably, it's really disappointing. So if everybody could just talk to each other about all of these terrible, horrendous, scary things that women have to do throughout the whole life, I think that would really help.
I'm going to challenge you a little bit. First of all, you've talked about it as a societal issue, which I have no problems with at all. I think that's absolutely the case. It's the case that they are subjects, all of those subjects you mentioned, are subjects which men of my generation are deeply embarrassed to talk about, and will do, leave the room rather than talk about them. Just get up and walk out. And it's essential that women are open about these things. I worry about HRT because I don't think it's a particularly wonderful drug, and I think that needs looking into. But the issue is raised by the survey, and you're absolutely right. It applies absolutely to menstruation as much as it does to menopause. But the issue is raised by the question was the lack of workplace provision, the lack of workplace policies by most of the firms for women who were going through the menopause. And one solicitor I read said this is absolutely a case of workplace discrimination. And what we need firms bringing in policies which, we have policies for people who lose loved ones. We have policies for people who are sick. We have policies for people who have all kinds of disabilities. But we do not have policies for women who are going through the menopause. And one of the factors is that it's something that most women will go through. And most people will have problems. What are the solutions to this, Sam?
Well, unfortunately, we used to have a little old thing called unions that were really good at getting rights and policies in place for workers. And unfortunately, we have gone back in time to a time where those people, they don't have the power in the workplace they used to. And if they do, most of them are dominated by men. I'm going to say it. However, I am going to say I had a fantastic talk with a male Unite shop steward recently who fought to get sanitary products in all of the bathrooms in Rolls-Royce. He did a very good job of that. So I'm not saying that men can't advocate for women, but like you say, if it's not something that happens to you and it is something that's taboo in society, it might not occur to you. I believe all the unions are working on menopause. All the ones that do have a foothold in their workplace are making sure those policies are in place. But if we really want policies that work for workers, we need strong unions.
Thank you very much. Paul and Stuart, before I close down the show, is there anything you desperately want to say about this topic? Probably
just
why
we should just support whatever we're being told by women on this.
Jane, how? Yes, I'm going to leave the last word
Oh,
to you.
and trans men. I'm going to really upset some people by saying that. Yeah, and trans men as well, who also go through the menopause.
It is hormonal. Yes, absolutely. Jane, how important an issue is this? Is this just some fad that, or is it something that we really need, that firms really need to get their heads around?
It's really important. I think we really need to sort this out. It's a little microcosm of the way that we're all viewed in society. I think we need to start valuing people as human beings and stop treating them as commodities that can be chucked away when they don't fit into whatever we want to box them up as.
Thank you so much. Well, listeners, thank you for all your comments, which really have flooded in, and I'm sure that Sam will have things to say. There's lots of food for thought. I'm sorry that we've overrun by 10 minutes, but I hope you agree it was absolutely the right thing to do in the circumstances. And I will say this to you, listener, if the things that you've heard tonight on all the topics we've talked about did not give you food for thought, then you've got a very closed mind and you need to worry about yourself, because the team was absolutely fantastic. The issues we've discussed are absolutely core critical. And thank you, team, for your amazing insights into these. We now go away for 5 minutes. When we come back, Sam is in charge. It's much more informal. We look at your comments. But just to say now, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, listeners. If you can stay with us and come back for that second half, you're so welcome. But otherwise, goodbye and see you next week. Bye-bye. Thank you.
My name is Jack Atkins and I'm not afraid, and I live and die by this vow that I've made. The only good fascist, a dead one, they say, and a rhyme we are. When I first left all them months ago, told him I'd come not to kill but to cure. For an ambulance driver my shot's pretty sure, and a rhyme we are. There'll be no passaran, no passaran, no passaran today. Fascists have come for our freedom, we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. I told my mother, now mother, be strong, for the left way is right and the right way is wrong. And you can stick that on my grave when I'm gone, for I'm a real we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. Fascists have come for our freedom, we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. Cast may be cast, and the cast may be cast, You armies of darkness, you best do your worst. 'Cause to win, yeah, well, you gotta get past us first. And around here we are. There'll be no place around, no place around, no place around today. Fascists have come for our freedom. We ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here. No pass around. No pass around. No pass around today. No pass around. No pass around, no pass around today. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom. We ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no place around here today.
On? Are we on? No jingle this time. Jingle roulette. It's fun, isn't it? When there's going to be a jingle.
It's not
when
just
is there
me.
not going to be a jingle?
Oh.
No, I know when I'm supposed to come in.
That was my
but
fault.
the jingle didn't play, John.
I couldn't find my little jingle scene because I've got a dog on me.
Oh, he's too busy cuddling a dog to do his jingle, honestly. That is Rosa, isn't it, Paul? That's her name.
Rosa, yeah. Yes,
Rosa.
it is Rosa.
Ah, Rosa. You know, I was going to say that like in a Welsh accent. Rosa. That's like a Bill and Ben Flower Pot Men thing, isn't it? That one of those. Oh, was it Postman Pat? They had a Rosa. Rosa. Yeah. Yeah. Please tell me you know what I'm talking about. No.
If it was Welsh, I think it might have been Fireman Sam, maybe.
It's Fireman Sam.
Fireman
100%
Sam.
Rosa.
Fireman Sam had a
Is
Rosa.
it Norman's mum? The bad kid who set everything on fire. It's his mum.
Yes, Norman Price.
I used to say to the students at this point, Sam, it's not my fault that you are too ignorant to understand the allusions.
Neil's asking where Penny is. Penny is away from Rosa. Like, you know, Penny just can't be bothered with a puppy yet. I'm sure they'll be firm friends at some stage, but not yet.
They'll get there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I now have 14 chickens, and we have begun the process of letting them meet each other. Chickens are brutal. They are violent. They are so aggressive with each other.
Dinosaurs, man, chickens, they're the same thing.
Yeah, they are. They're descended from dinosaurs, descended from velociraptors, you know.
Do you know
so,
I don't know if I've done this before. Do you know, this is a really nerdy fact. They now refer to the dinosaurs that went extinct. They refer to them as the non-avian dinosaurs. Because they now have fully accepted that birds survived, but we're also dinosaurs. They're the same thing. So they refer to non-avian dinosaurs as the ones that got extinct. So there you go.
Right. And all that evolution, and basically they just use that to walk into fences and be incredibly stupid. Oh, chickens are so stupid and aggressive. It's a great combination. Stuart.
Right. So turkey dinosaurs, the frozen cheap food product, are in fact dinosaurs.
That
Is
depends.
that's the
Depends if
scientific
they're actually
outcome?
made of turkey, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But yes.
This is the level of hard-hitting political commentary you came here for. We've talked about Fireman Sam and turkey dinosaurs. Oh, great.
And
Hey,
the
Paul, you
ages of
wanted
the
to do
dogs for
some...
the question as well. The ages of the dogs for the question. She's like 14 weeks, and Penny is 9, and Penny's getting cuddled by Laura, so that's okay.
Yeah. Paul, you wanted to do some shout-outs and geek out over who's been watching us tonight?
Yeah.
Go for it.
One of my favourite podcasts, Milk the Cow podcast. We've been on commenting today, so it was really good, and they really made me laugh as well at one point. And I think Jane as well. I think both of us were laughing. I think at the same thing. When Milk the Cow were on, I'll just have a look for what that was. But I also pleased Ray Goodspeed tonight, which is always a good one. Let's see what Milk the Cow said. It's one of my life's ambitions to get Sammy Wilson to sign my Jurassic Park DVD. Love that.
Fun and games.
And also, it was really nice to see Leanne speaking some Welsh tonight.
We've got a high caliber of viewers on Socialist Think Tank. You're all absolute legends, and a lot of you come back week after week. Don't forget to tell your friends about us, because that's fun to have more friends and to have more viewers and have more comments. Although you have been commenting brilliantly, and you know what? John he's getting really good at picking up the comments as we go through the show. What I do is I copy and paste, because I like it better. I copy and paste comments into a Word document as we go through, and I'm like copying them over and then like deleting them straight away because John's done them a shout out already.
So sorry, Sam. I'm stealing your thunder.
It's all right.
The king of jokes, Neil did not get the joke, so I think I have to explain the Jurassic Park DVD thing.
Go for it.
So Sammy Wilson is in the DUP. He's the one who I was mentioning about when he said about Brexit. If there was a food shortage, everyone could just go to the chippy. I could do an impression, but I'm not going to do one. And anyway, he also doesn't believe in evolution, so therefore doesn't believe dinosaurs existed. So that's why he wants him to sign the Jurassic Park DVD. So that's why it's funny. But it's not that funny when you have to explain a joke.
Regarding what I was talking about talking about all of the stuff that women go through in their life as a biological fact rather than a secret mystery. Jacqueline said when she first started her periods, her mum treated it as a taboo subject. She had to hide her sanitary products and was never allowed to talk about it. It was really seen to be something of as ashamed of. Luckily, a few years later, that attitude completely changed and women could be more open about these things. And Neil said when he worked for Bradford Council, he helped to ensure that there were sanitary products in the women's toilets. So, you know, that definitely there's always progress. And it's good when there is progress. Saying that, we've got to be aware that these things can, you know, the tables can turn on us. We were talking about what if the right to choose in the UK was potentially at threat. Like if we could, you know what would really damage women's right to choose in the UK is if you know, the NHS was severely underfunded and unable to provide terminations in a timely manner. There are limits, there are time limits on these kinds of things. There are certain types of procedures you can have at certain points of pregnancy, and there are certain time limits on when you're not allowed legally to have an abortion unless there's a disability involved. That's another thing. That's another debate for another time. But there is a 20-week ban on abortion. So if there was a huge waiting list, that would be effectively banning abortions in the UK. So there's a lot of, yeah, I don't think we can just be so, I don't think we can be confident about anything, to be honest. Like Jane said, if we went back 10, 15 years, we wouldn't have thought for 1 second we'd be discussing the things that we are, and the wholesale decriminalisation of protest. One of the things that was in the Queen's speech today was about introducing a crime of locking on, introducing a specific criminal act for like super gluing yourself to stuff and handcuffing yourself to railings, for example. That reminded me of a saying, and I can't remember whether I can remember the right words for it, but it's like, don't quit on a bad day, don't make specific rules for a general problem, that kind of thing. I can't remember what the saying is, but it does not seem wise to make very specific rules.
It shows you what that bill was about. That bill was about effective protest. It's a very effective way to do a non-violent protest. What would they have done to Gandhi? They would have made sitting in the street illegal. That's what they would have done, and at the end of the day, it wasn't it? Like, I think what Gandhi did was technically illegal at the time, and that's why they beat all the people up. So, like, you know, I think what they're probably going to do is they're criminalising something, and it's going to make it worse because people will see how others are treated when they do something like that, and that will anger them, and eventually people will come around to the idea that what this government are doing is incredibly wrong.
Yeah. We didn't really talk about the Queen's speech. I think we talked quickly about the Queen's speech at the beginning. Does anybody have any particular thoughts on today's political unravelings? Nope.
I didn't see it. I don't know what was in it. I think I saw that little bit about protest. I didn't. For some reason, it was even less appealing this year, probably because, like, instead of an old lady in a £1 million hat telling us about what the government is not going to do to help us, it was our son.
Yeah, Neil Terry says, John said we're talking about the Queen's speech next week.
Right.
She's done right. Thank you, Neil. Stop me having to say it.
Can we talk about the Green New Deal Rising people? Because that video was amazing. That made me so happy. Did you see it? When they've got tickets to the Conservative Party dinner and they sat in different places. Oh my God, it was just fantastic. And
what did you do, Jane? Tell us more about it. I saw it, but I don't know any of the details of what happened.
It's just brilliant. So one of them stood up first on the turn. They were just so eloquent and, you know, polite, and just saying this new policy, sending people to Rwanda, it's inhumane. And so they got the bouncers to take her out. And then someone else stood up, somewhere else in the room. And so the other bouncer went to get hit, that person, and then someone else stood up, and then they ran out of bouncers, so they got to talk for quite a while before the bouncers like came back in, and then someone else stood up. It was just fantastic. They had loads of
it was like at a posh dinner. It was like a Conservative like members dinner type event. So how they managed to get in is, well, that's what I kept thinking the whole time. Like, there's nobody else noticed that there's like a whole table over there of people you've never met before. Like, surely you know everybody who's in this room. So yes, so well done to them. I just think protests are really important, and especially non-violent. Like, if you remove the ability to protest in a non-violent way, what's going to happen next? I just think, you know, I'm not advocating for violent protests, but if that's the only outlet people have, it will boil over. That's why riots happen, you know. So it is a worry for me. I also vaguely worry that I'm going to end up getting arrested for being annoying. Like, that's one of the rules, isn't it? Don't be annoying in public. I'm annoying all the time. I can't help it.
Are you going to Banners Held High, by the way, because Neil's asking?
I am going with Banners Held High, yes. Well, I don't know whether I've told my husband.
Laura's going as well, so she'll be representing Socialist Think Tank with you down there.
Yeah.
And the Women's Banner Group, obviously, which is your primary
The
reason
banner's
for going.
out. Absolutely.
But, you know,
Can't wait.
always wear many hats, but our hats don't have their own car, unlike the Queen. Nicking that one from Neil on there.
Yes, Mia says they were brilliant, the protesters. They all spoke one by one, giving them time to get their message across. What I thought when watching that video as well is, imagine sitting in that room and thinking that you're right. Like, I am on the right side of history. I'm going to listen to Priti Patel talk about removing people from this country to Rwanda, and there are people who are so committed to this government being terrible for the world that they are putting themselves in a pretty dangerous position, actually, to be manhandled by private security guards. I'm definitely on the right side of history here. Like, there's some real sort of Mark says the new law bans street preachers because preachers are actually protesters. Well, I'm not that sad about that.
That's me ruined.
Sorry, Chris. Chris said that Paul is now the Wingate's Guy Garvey. I didn't read that out because I don't know who he is. And then I Googled him. I still don't know who he is.
Isn't he the lead singer?
Oh,
from
right.
Elbow?
No, that's not music.
Who's Guy Garvey? Who?
I think
He's got an elbow.
music show on Radio 6, and I think.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
Question.
I think so.
Go
He
for
must
it.
have lost weight at some stage.
Now, if street preaching isn't allowed, where does that leave the manic street preachers?
Are you stealing Neil's lines, Stuart?
Like, are they now like risking it by doing something?
I'd happily ban them as well, to be honest.
I would have thought manic street preachers were even worse than ordinary street preachers.
Was perhaps the law just targeted simply at the manic street preachers?
I suspect the thing is, if they don't do it on the streets, that'll be okay. They'll be able to do it in gigs.
Jan was asking about the chickens, Sam. Did you see?
Oh, I didn't see the chicken question.
He said, have we got free range back yet?
Oh, yes, we have. Chicken lockdown is over. So chickens are very happy about that. And they can now eat all my weeds. One of the reasons for having the chickens is that they eat weeds, by the way. And they do love dandelions, but they don't eat nettles. So that's a problem. So I'm a bit disappointed with chicken kind for that one. You started off being a velociraptor, and now you won't even eat nettle for me. So
nettles, by the way, I realised that we're not talking about anything political, and I apologise about that. But the thing is, nettles are really important because large numbers of butterflies lay their eggs on nettles, which are the food for many butterfly larvae, caterpillars. So you must never decimate that patch of nettles. You must leave those.
I'm gonna strum it down.
You're a fly murderer.
I'm a fly murderer. Oh, the thing is, right, I tried this, right? Everybody was like, oh, don't strim things and let things like rewild and have loads of weeds in your allotment because you'll save the planet. All having lots of weeds in my allotment did was get me threatened with eviction from the town council because they don't like it. No, people complain because if there's weeds in my allotment, then those seeds of the weeds are going into my neighbour's allotment and they're all complaining about me. And let me tell you, people on allotments talk a lot about other people on allotments, and I can't deal with that kind of pressure. So I will be strimming the nettles.
No, I was the chair of environment on the Great Aycliffe Town Council, and I know Stuart has got this similar one, and Chilton, and he will probably back me up when I say that one of the most difficult things for a local council to deal with are the allotment holders. They are absolute nightmares in a nice way, but my God, they're militant allotment holders, and they certainly know what they want. Durham County Council tried to give the allotments away. You know, they tried to give them to the town councils, and at one point we thought that they had to take them if we wanted to give them away, but they disproved that, so we couldn't get away with that. And but the town councils didn't want the allotments. Nobody wants allotments because of the allotment holders. Less than.
I'm making more allotments.
You're going to have to with the crisis, with the food crisis, with the increasing cost of living. You're going to have to cope with the fact that people are going to want to be growing their own food. People are going to want to be sort of keeping chickens. We're going to have to go back to how things were even before the Second World War.
We're going to make one. We're making a people's allotment. I haven't told everyone it's going to be called that yet because I have to tell the rest of the group we're involved with to do that. But in the sort of charitable organisation I'm involved with at the moment, we're going to make a people's allotment where the church are going to be involved and stuff, and they run a food bank. So you're going to have like fresh veg for the food bank and things like that, which I don't know. I do always have reservations about normalising food banks. I really like. We're so used to them now. They're so part of our furniture that we're like, yeah, that happens. It's so weird. People having to go to a food bank and us saying, well, why don't we have an allotment where we grow food and we can, you know, if we're doing that for everyone and food was free for everyone, I can kind of get behind that, you know, in a future at some point then where we don't really deal with money and things like that. But for now, the idea that we are so normalised with food banks is, I don't know, it's disturbing, isn't it?
Next winter, what we're going to do is please, listeners as well, and it contradicts me, but I have a real fear that we're going to have a crisis of coldness next winter as people just can't afford to heat themselves. And I remember in the 60s and 70s, when you went to the library, there'd be the newspaper reading room. And it was absolutely full of poor men reading the newspapers. And I don't think that some of them couldn't even read, but it was warm. And it was somewhere central to go where you could actually stay warm. And, we're providing places where people can get food because they can't afford to eat. And I wonder how long it's going to be before we're having to provide places which we keep warm, where people can stay warm, and you can leave your freezing house and go and sit and ostensibly do something just to keep warm. And you're absolutely right, Paul. We're going back. We're going back to a more right-wing, poorer, more totalitarian society. And we're just shifting back through the decades, and we need radical change.
I spoke to a gardener a little while ago, back when it was cold, and I walked past him, and he was heading off down to his allotment. And I said, why are you off down there for? And he's like, to stay warm. I was like, pardon? He's like, oh yeah, because I can burn stuff down the allotment and stay warm. Yeah. If I have to sit in the house and be cold. Like that's miserable. That's shocking. That it was warmer, and cheaper for him to stay warm on the allotment than it was to just be at home.
Yeah.
In this day of like all the technology that we have, and think about the things that our technology focuses on, and what it could have focused on. We could have focused on free energy, cheap energy. We could have focused on making sure that there's abundant. Well, there is abundant food. There's so much thrown away. We could have focused on so many different things, and instead we've got these devices that control our lives, and we've got like the world's most intelligent people working out ways to sell us things by advertising and coming up with algorithms rather than trying to solve the problems of our generation. It's frightening. Or the other thing that they do, the most intelligent people do. Did you know the people who are the top performers in physics and mathematics and stuff like that? They either end up working in the advertising industry for things like Facebook, Google, and stuff like that, trying to monetize what they're doing, or they work in the city. They work on ways to come up with financial instruments that'll make more money. So all the people who should be maybe, I don't know, doing something, making breakthroughs in physics and making breakthroughs in medicine and making breakthroughs in all these different things that would tangibly improve our lives, are wasting their time trying to sell us stuff. Isn't that sad?
One of the things I get upset about is our Green New Deal, which is all about big business and large-scale projects. Whereas, in fact, if you were to just give people access to existing technology for their house cheaply, then people could reduce, for instance, solar panels would reduce our electricity needs sufficiently to do away with any electricity crisis. And of course, the problem with that is that if people were making their own electricity in various ways, they wouldn't be buying it. And where would all those profits go? And so we just plow down this capitalist road, making money for the big companies, and it's reaching crisis point now that the poorest people are being expected to stump up to keep this massive profit-making edifice going, and we've got no money left to do it with. They've taken it all, and the whole thing is on the verge of collapse. And we lost the opportunity. We lost the opportunity to help people make their own electricity, keep their own homes warm, keep their own homes efficient. And we began to do that. Can you remember the eco? And it was David Cameron that screwed that. And I do understand that there was lots of problems with workmen who weren't qualified fitting things that they weren't qualified to fit and promptly didn't work. But the idea of eco was that they took a percentage of the profits of the companies and they ploughed it into people's homes, and and huge amounts of work were done in terms of insulating homes, putting things, insulation in the walls and things like that, getting new boilers for people, that kind of thing, and warm home campaigns. And Cameron said, "Oh, this isn't right that we're helping this. So we're going to put it to reducing bills for everyone." And so he slashed that eco grant and they knocked pennies off the price of electricity. And where did that take them, hey?
They also sold the Green Investment Bank, didn't they? And they also banned onshore wind, which was the cheapest form of renewable electricity we had, and we were world leaders in it. But they didn't like it because people in posh Tory shires don't like a windmill going up near them. That's basically it.
Yeah. To be fair, they also don't like it in rural areas. I mean, there's always this not in my backyard thing, and people need to understand that these things aren't forever. We're not building windmills like monuments. These are a technology that will provide and ensure people can survive for the next number of years. This isn't the forever solution. This is what we need now. Let's do it, and it doesn't have to be there forever. There can always be better solutions, but frustration.
And also, you might not like how this wind turbine looks, but the whole landscape will look a lot worse when it's under 6 foot of water. Unfortunately, I'm in favour of wind turbines because they make our long car journeys a lot better, because it's something that I talk to my kids about a lot. They like them.
I think they're good looking. And if we painted them like Spitfires, people would have a very different opinion of them.
That's nice. Hey, Neil says, be careful. Don't mug off the allotmenteers, because if you do, they all plot against you.
I loved the allotment people, and they loved me. Sort of. The main thing to do is to listen to what they have to say. It's the same with everything else. Once you listen to people, then you find that they're talking real sense, and you need to change your policies. The world, politicians now, so many of them are just concerned to fob people off. I absolutely valued the plain talking of the allotment people. At least they told you what they thought. Stephen Gilling asks, is this a general thing? Are the post-war generation comfortable with what they have done to the next generation?
Well, John, are you?
Immediately, I've any doubt I wished I hadn't. The thing, Stephen Gilling, is that my generation believed that technology could significantly help. And so my generation has been responsible for massive improvements in technology, which on the surface of it have actually massively improved people's lifestyle. So all the technology that we're using today has been invented by my generation. And we believe that we could solve world food poverty by tractors and fertilizers. And to a degree, we have. And sort of one of the things I regret about the modern green movement is that sort of mine was the generation that invented the family car and made it available through the Mini to large numbers of people who could afford it. And so a family day out in the countryside, personal mobility. These are the huge freedoms that you just take for granted that my generation actually brought through. And so I everything that you have was given to you by your parents and your upbringing, all provided by that generation. So it's very, I really object when people sort of portray us as the murderers of the world. One of the problems, however, is that we did not take proper account of the spin-offs. And we looked only at the end result, for instance, in terms of the car, the increased mobility, personal mobility. We didn't look at what it was doing to the environment carefully enough. We were, that's unforgivable, because we were told about this right through from Rachel Carson in Silent Spring. And so now we have left you with one bloody ecological mess to clear up. And the other thing that's unacceptable about my generation is that when we told, well, you'll have to do this and we'll have to do this and it'll cost this and it'll cost that, we're actually dragging our feet to do things which are massively necessary. And those things are unacceptable. You don't slag off my generation and I won't slag off yours, I think is the answer.
Yeah. Stephen likes that answer, by the way. It was a fine answer, John.
God bless you, Stephen.
We will take this one to round us off, because It's a specific question that's been asked. Chris says, on the results of the English local elections, especially Sunderland, North Tyneside, etc. What are the panel's thoughts on the Durham County Council elections in 2025? Now, I'm just like, Chris, we just had an election. Don't talk about having another election, but there will be one. And he says, especially on the back of County Durham Labour comments about the future. I don't know what those comments are. I don't know whether anybody else does. So does anybody other than me have an opinion on what might happen to Durham County Council in 2025?
I could tell you probably what's going to happen with your Rainbow Coalition.
Go on then, Stuart.
As the clock ticks down, eventually they will all have to take opposing positions to win an election. And that's going to become increasingly difficult because there's a great number of groups in that rainbow. And I would imagine it will become, I don't want to say easy pickings for a Labour Party position, because it's not. But it'll be interesting, if nothing else, to see where they go with that.
I was just thinking of the decision to sell County Hall. I have never known anything. It comes in levels of stupidity. It comes second only to sending people to Rwanda. Sort of, I think that some of the decisions that you're making, Chris, well, we'll just have to wait and see what people think about them. And at the moment, you're new and you're getting away with everything. And you might get another term of 4 years. But eventually, people are going to start being as cross with you as they were with Labour. And then things will change.
Yeah. Time will tell. But honestly, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens in 2025. Who knows? I might retire. I might go and get a proper job.
It's going to probably depend, though, isn't it? It's going to depend on all sorts of different things. You know, it's like, you know, it depends whether Labour have plenty of members left. It depends whether those people are community orientated. It depends whether the outlook of the Labour Party changes and it is focused on that. You know, like there are all sorts of different things. I think it's probably in the Labour Party's own hands. I think there will be an opportunity for the Labour Party, if they do things right, to come back into power in County Durham. But they need to stop behaving like they're everyone's opposition. So, like, the Tories see the main opposition as the Labour Party. The Lib Dems see the main opposition as the Labour Party. The Independents see the main opposition as the Labour Party. The only thing that binds them together is this seeming hatred of the Labour Party. And that has to be something that changes, because unless you're getting 50% of people everywhere supporting you, then that's a very difficult position to win from when you're everyone's enemy.
I've got a question, Paul. Sam, if I can do it. What's going to happen if Keir Starmer has to resign?
It's a good question. Shall we find out? No. I mean, that's the plan, isn't it? Is if Keir Starmer, what he's saying is, I'm willing to resign if I get a fixed penalty. Therefore, you have had a fixed penalty. Therefore, you should resign. And he's going to come out of this, and he's obviously done the maths and he's a bloody lawyer. He knows the law, right? So he knows he's not going to get a fixed penalty from this. So he's not going to have to resign. But at the end of the investigation, he's going to be able to turn around and say, well, I said I would, and I showed you mine, now you show me yours. Is that going to make Boris Johnson resign? Of course not. But it further cements this image that Boris Johnson is now cultivating, that he is not to be trusted, he is dishonest, he doesn't follow the rules. It's interesting. It further damages the Prime Minister's good, whatever he's been doing to get votes that I don't quite understand up to now. Mark says, what happens if he does get a fine? I guess if he does get a fine, he resigns. And there's an awful lot of chatter at the moment about who might run to be the Labour leader if he did resign. That's an interesting thing as well.
And I know the answer to the question.
Okay.
If Keir Starmer resigns, Richard Holden will have to do constituency work instead of what he's doing now.
I know, right?
As far as I understand the rules for standing for leader, hasn't Keir Starmer fixed it so that if Keir Starmer resigned, the only person who would be able to stand for leader would be Keir Starmer? We'd all have to elect him again.
You'd need a big amount of MPs to support you. A lot of people are saying it's win-win for the right of the Labour Party. They think that someone like Wes Streeton is lining up the leadership because they think that once Starmer's done the work that he's done to make sure that the right of the party are in control, they're quite happy to get rid of Starmer and have someone else. So they're saying this is a win-win situation. That's just what's been reported in a couple of news outlets this week. But I think Starmer knows he's not going to get fined because Durham police don't issue fines for prior events. They've said they're not going to, and Starmer said he will resign if fined. He knew they weren't going to fine, so about knowing the law, that's it. It's but I don't know whether that puts him on a good footing, talking about his resignation, putting it in the public domain, and also having called on, like, say, Rishi Sunak to resign for what he did, which was literally pop into a room for a couple of minutes with Boris Johnson while he sang Happy Birthday. That was like kind of quite flimsy, whereas Boris Johnson attended loads of parties and things like that and did all sorts of things. Sunak's was quite harsh, I thought. If Starmer is fined for what he did, which is probably about similar to what Sunak did, then he has to go, but he won't go if he's not fined, and he probably won't be fined, even if he's found to have broken the rules. So I think it's going to end up with everyone looking the same. And I thought there was a very interesting picture today of Boris Johnson and Keir Starmer standing next to each other. They looked remarkably similar in attitude and build and things like that. It was kind of like two cheeks of the same, But...
And on that shocking statement, we will end today. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Remember, you can find Socialist Think Tank on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and on your favourite podcast app. Please do come and subscribe and like and share and tell all your friends about us. And if you do want to be on the show, let us know, because there's always space for a little one. And we will see you next week at 9 o'clock. Bye.
Flag, flag.